Good evening and welcome to Merit TV Canada's Election Watch on the path to April 28th, which is Election Day here in Canada. Happy long weekend. Today is Monday. We are going to be going through several key things that have developed over the past weekend, from the debates that happened, the French debates last Wednesday, the English debates on Thursday. The Liberals, they have released their costed platform, which gives us an insight to the spending, to where they want to allocate funds, plans that they have. And it's going to be very interesting to look through that. If you haven't had a chance to look through it, you should comb through that, because there's a difference between when people are just saying good things, but then when they actually present a plan. So we're going to analyze that. On the latter half of the show, I'm also going to be joined by Eric Kaufmann, who is a professor of politics with Buckingham University. You're going to want to hear and stick around for that. He's got some great insights when we talk and get a little bit deeper. I want to ask him some questions regarding immigration policies. How have they differed over the last 10 years? Who's got some different ideas going forward when it comes to immigration. So make sure to stick around for that. But right now, it's an interesting time in Canada, because I do believe that we are on a continental divide, not one of geographical purposes, but one in the sense of we are standing on the edge as Canada, a directional edge. Which way are things going to fall? As we roll the dice through this election, which direction are we going to choose to take as Canadians? You know, when we are electing and we're looking at electing the next government, the next party to form government, you know, we are not just looking at a platform. I do truly believe that we are choosing which path we want to continue to go down. Or do we want to forge a brand new path? The question that is before all of us this coming election, it's a stark difference of a question we have to ask. Do we want to continue with another decade of the same bureaucratic, debt-fueled ideology that has really hollowed out our country economically, as well in several other areas? Or do we want to take a more of an uncertain path, maybe a risk that you might call it, but might be a necessary path, reclaiming our sovereignty, restoring the regional unity that we once had in Canada, and also unleashing the untapped greatness that we have in terms of our natural resources, our ability to generate wealth like we have once. There have been amazing ideas that have started here in Canada, and we know that we have got a place where we can attract outside investment. We can attract the best of the talent pools, and our national ability to curate and to create a place that becomes one of the best places to live on earth. We have that capability in Canada, but it comes down to the idea of how are we going to achieve this? We have seen truly over the last 10 years what has happened when we apply certain policies, certain ideologies to our country, and we can actually check stats, you can check facts, you can check growth, all the different measurements by which we look at our country, the different metrics that we judge how well our country is doing, from per capita GDP to investment that is coming in, to immigration, to people that are leaving, to money that is flowing out of our country, to our resources and how we handle those. All of these things can look, and we have not been on the side of growth. We have not been on the side of progressing forward. So we do have to change and look if we want to have a different result. That's a question you will have to ask yourself, is do you want a different result going forward? Because I believe as we do continue through this and this election, we're on the precipice of a potential direction change or more of the same. The Liberals, they released their costed platform over the weekend. It's a very similar blueprint to what we have seen, but there's some new packaging on it. I know there is additional spending when it comes to defense, which is, I think, a good move, about $30.9 billion, which I believe by 2030, they're wanting to get us on par with what we should be contributing towards NATO. This is something that Donald Trump has requested or suggested to Canada, that we get our act in order. But at the same time, there was a lot of, I thought, spending that was disguised as investments. It's important to know this and to distinguish what this means, because, to be honest, we have seen the same trope year after year of hiding spending as investments. if you look at the Liberal costed platform, it doesn't seem there does not seem to be any difference in terms of how are we going to reduce debt, how are we going to reduce spending. It actually has an increase of our national debt over the course of 3 to 4 years. It's not a reset. It's actually a repackaged continuation of the last 10 years of central planning. Tax and spend economics is at the base of it. Also managerial politics, which is dressed up as sovereignty. That's my opinion of when I went through the platform. And I do believe that it is not a great directional change. It is very similar to what has been passed. Carney has said that he differentiates himself from Trudeau because he will focus on creating and focusing our economics to be able to grow and to invest in that, but I'm just not convinced by looking through it. But look at the Conservatives. They still have not released their costed platform, which is very important to understand. You are saying a bunch of things. You have a bunch of slogans. You seem to have reasonable ideas about where you want to go for it, but we need to be able to see this costed platform. I do want to make a suggestion that before we have national debates with the leaders that are going to be running this country, we should have full platforms available, costed platforms and their full explanations as to the plans that they have so that it can actually lend towards us learning more through watching the debates, because that's something is very important. Looking at the debates that happened last week, we did learn a little bit. There wasn't too many fireworks. It was a pretty interesting time to watch as you have Pierre and Carney square off. But Carney, he stays polished. He did not mess up the debates. Pierre Poilievre was on point where he talked about energy. He talked about reducing crime and increasing pipelines. So there wasn't really a lot that moved forward from it, but that we'll be watching this week as we continue to monitor what these parties are going to do, because we are 1 week away from Election Day as it's coming up. Stick with us. We'll be back right after the break. Well, welcome back to Merit TV Canada's election coverage as we are on our way. We're about 7 to 8 days away from Election Day on April 28th. As you know, we have been bringing you the latest of what's been happening within the Canadian election from all parties, most recent news as well. It's a pleasure of mine to be able to have Eric Kaufmann join me today. We're looking forward to hearing from him. He's a professor at University of Buckingham, professor of politics. Also, his most recent book, he's an author of The Third Awakening, which is his fifth book, amongst many other things. If you want to follow him, we'll have his information on the bottom here. You can follow him on X, as he's got many great opinions. Eric, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
David, it's great to be here. I'm coming to you not from my usual London, but from Los Angeles, where I happen to be. So that's easier time-wise.
Hey, there we go. I'm glad it worked for you. So we got the best of Eric, not the late night or early morning Eric, which is good. Hey, I want to dive into a couple things because we just had Easter long weekend in Canada. We had the debates, French debates happened this past Wednesday, and then the English debates on Thursday. There's been some more information that's unfolded. The Liberals have released a costed platform as well. I believe we're still waiting on the Conservatives, but I'd love to hear a couple of your thoughts about what has happened post-debate. But one of the things that was noticed, there was no English language debate on immigration. Immigration is a big deal in Canada. Would love to hear your thoughts on maybe why that was. Was it avoided? What happened there?
Yeah, I think this is extremely telling about what it says about Canada and particularly about elite political culture in Canada. This would be astounding from a European perspective, from an American perspective. And here we see that in Quebec, which actually has a considerably lower foreign-born and immigrant share than the rest of Canada, there was a debate. And in
Yep.
English-speaking Canada, there wasn't.
Interesting.
And so, what's the reason for that? Well, the reason for that is that the politically correct taboos around immigration are just extremely strong in Canada, which is preventing democracy from happening on this particular issue. That's essentially the explanation. The same way we could talk about other issues where politically correct taboos operate. For example, the trans issue wasn't mentioned. For example, the Indigenous issue around the mass graves wasn't mentioned. These are all issues that need to be discussed. If we're going to talk about Canadian pride, we need to talk about them. They aren't allowed because the gatekeepers, which would be the mainstream media, but also both major political parties, are not on board. They are too afraid to touch this, and this sort of reflects the powerful cultural left liberal elite political culture that exists and has existed, to be fair, for decades in English Canada.
Is this not the time, though, for courage and for boldness when it comes to issues like this? Immigration is a massive issue in our country, especially, in my personal opinion, when it comes to the economy, the fiscal policies that are going to be put forth to help our country. We have not been on a good path in the last 10 years. That's just not opinion. You can look at the facts behind that. But immigration is an economic tool, and immigration has a massive effect on our economy. So why does people still seem to be hesitant, our leaders hesitant to address, which is obviously having such a major impact on Canada?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would note is in my lifetime in Canada, it has never been acceptable to discuss immigration levels, which tells you something. So this isn't a new taboo.
Okay.
It's like criticizing multiculturalism also has been a taboo for many, many decades. So this isn't something that's just come up during the great awakening of the last 10 years. It is going to take somebody with courage to break that taboo. In Europe, that taboo has fallen across the board. It's taken the populist right to do it, but the center right has followed in behind. That has not happened in Canada, and so the taboo is still standing. What that just essentially means is an issue which is monumental. I mean, Canada has a 30% foreign-born share, which is the leading, it's the highest share in the OECD. It's pushing towards, at this rate, Canada's going to wind up like Dubai, a kind of hotel, right? I mean, that level of churn in its population. And yet we know from the academic research, trying to have support for, social programs, for a sense of national identity that will allow people to, volunteer to fight, to trust in institutions. All of those things are going to be eroded by this continual increase in the foreign-born share. And by the way, yes, it's an economic issue, and it's only because has been associated with, the cost of living and housing and so forth, that it's been allowed to be broached, and it was broached first by, the Globe and Mail and other establishment outlets. But you're only allowed to talk about the economics. Notice that you're not
Yeah.
allowed to talk about the cultural side, the impact on cohesion, the impact on social trust. None of those things matters. The feelings of people, both white and non-white, who are attached to a particular version of Canada. Yes, it can change, but that all of that conversation is out of bounds. And even the conversation about immigration's economic effect, was out of bounds for the debate. So that's extremely telling. And what I would say is that if Canadian democracy does not permit this issue to be resolved, we're going to see these problems just fester and fester and not be addressed. So yeah, it's a real tragedy, but that's the reality that we face.
Well, I, for one, would love to see a leader take this on with a bold stance, but also be reasonable. I'm interested a little bit on the history, if you could fill us in. When you look back to Stephen Harper and his government and their immigration policies, you look at Justin Trudeau and their immigration policies, specifically in the last 4 to 5 years in Canada, where we've seen a large ramping up. Did Justin Trudeau, did he build upon something that Stephen Harper was doing, or was there a good policy that the former Conservative government with Stephen Harper had? Did Justin Trudeau ruin that? What are the key differences?
Yeah, I mean, I really think this is there's some truth there. There's no question that Trudeau put immigration on steroids and acted in a completely irresponsible manner by bringing 1.5 million people in, which was sort of, again, record setting for the West. However, I think there is this misconception that somehow Canada was handling immigration super well, a model for the world. There was this immigration consensus. Yeah, the consensus was you don't talk about immigration levels because that's racist, which of course it isn't. It's complete nonsense. That consensus is a big part of the problem of why we're here. And so yeah, I would be critical, not as critical, of course, of Harper as I would be of Trudeau, but I think Harper and other conservatives were unwilling to challenge the taboo. I'm not going to call it a consensus. I'm going to call it a taboo around immigration. And for that reason, Canada had a suboptimal immigration policy. And in a way, family reunification was a significant chunk of the immigrant. This idea that it was all skills based, no, most people admitted were either dependents of or came in under family reunification or other categories of immigration. Canada already had a foreign-born share that was leading the OECD. It was far too high, in my view, for social cohesion. I think what we're going to see is an increasingly, we're not going to have people at each other's throats. No, that's not the way it works. But we are. There's a significant body of research. Robert Putnam of Harvard University has done work on this, that social solidarity and trust is going to start to take a hit in many different ways. Trust that citizens have in each other is going to start to decline. Attachment to local community. In 1,000 different ways, these sorts of indicators of social cohesion and trust are going to start to decline. And I just think that this issue needs to be dealt with. We need to have an honest conversation, regardless of where people come out on this. I just don't think that. So I wouldn't say that policy was great during the Harper years or the Mulroney
Okay.
years or in the past. I think that's a misconception.
So between Mark Carney and the Liberals and Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, are any of them providing a new policy, new platform that helps Canada, in your opinion, or is it more of the same?
My view is it's more of the same. I mean, there are a few bits of the Poilievre platform, that I like. I mean, his willingness to take on the media, which essentially has essentially is very biased against the Conservatives and has been for a long time, and that reflects simply the makeup of the people that are hired into the major networks. Willingness to take that on and to show that actually these people are against you and the veneer of neutrality must be removed. I think that's good, but in concrete policy terms, I think Poilievre has been unwilling to challenge the consensus, whether it be on immigration, whether it be on issues like Canada's history. Yes, he did come out in favor of John A. Macdonald, but he has not been willing to, for example, challenge the mass graves hoax. For
Yeah.
example, the sort of genocide myth that underpins attacks on Canada's history. So I think it's been quite timid. Now he's still better than the Liberals, but it's more salami slices than the kind of distance I would like to see. And I actually think that if he sort of said, we are a truth-based society, we are going to speak the truth, and we're going to have an honest. We're going to deal honestly with our past, um, not through the romanticization of Indigenous peoples, not through selective readings of history or the residential schools. I think people would follow him because I just think people want to know that. But I just don't think that courage is there yet in Canadian politics, unfortunately. Now, the one thing I would say, obviously better for Poilievre to get in because it's only when the Conservatives get in and don't deliver on these issues around culture and immigration that voters are going to realize actually they're going to need to have some kind of grassroots pressure to get the changes they want.
Mark Carney has been trying to differentiate himself from Justin Trudeau he's been asked several times, do you think he's been a great prime minister or not? And he said well, there are some things we align on, but essentially said he's going to focus a lot more on the economy and growing the economy, trying to differentiate himself. Question for you is Mark Carney not woke like Justin Trudeau?
So I think we're talking about a matter of degrees here, right? We're talking about if woke. I would say if Trudeau was 11 out of 10 on that, Carney might be 7 or 8 out of 10. So he's still woke. And what do I mean by that? So on the one hand, he's clearly not wearing rainbow socks and virtue signaling the way that Justin Trudeau did. He's also said some good things around, Canada's founding peoples, and he said some things which Trudeau would never have said. So I give him full marks for that. However, when it comes to the operation of woke institutions in Canada, and I'm talking about, for example, racial discrimination against whites, sex discrimination against men, in, for example, the allocation of Canada Research chairs in the advertising of faculty jobs, diversity training that has a critical race and gender ideology component to it across the civil service. When it comes to challenging the trans activist agenda, all of these areas, he's nowhere. He would, and in fact, you heard him say, "Oh, we don't do culture wars." What that means is green light to the Cultural Revolution as carried on within the institutions from schools to universities to the civil service. We're not going to touch you. You just go to town. The problem with there is, in a way, the woke revolution doesn't need Mark Carney to juice it up. It's going full blast. The activists are already in control. They're setting the tone in all the institutions, including the school system. He doesn't have to do anything. He just has to do nothing and deflect the conversation away. This is the new strategy on the left, because they know that it's a vote loser. What they want to do is whenever anyone raises an issue around, should you have gender reassignment surgery for underage, minors, it's always, oh, you're being divisive. Oh, stop stoking the culture war. They're trying to change the conversation, deflect it away, use taboos so that we don't have to discuss these cultural issues. That's where I think Carney is I think he wants to enable things to go on as they have in the past, but he's not going to be as aggressively in your face with it as Trudeau was.
Okay. So, Eric, we just have about 1 minute left here. I want to ask you a question. After we've seen the debates last week, the Liberal costed platform came out. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look through that. I combed through it quite a bit this weekend. I'm interested to know, after with that most recent information we've seen, what do you think, which it looks like it could, although some polls are showing Conservatives have been gaining some ground over the past several days, if it turns out to be a Carney Liberal government, what does that look like for Canada, in your opinion?
Well, I'm less concerned with the economic issues, which I don't think there's much difference between the parties, honestly. I mean, you don't have a lot of power over the economy. I'm concerned about positional issues on culture and immigration, where there is much more potential to differentiate. And here, I worry that with Carney in, it's going to be more of the same. So large-scale migration, unchecked woke within the civil service, which, let's face it, does a number of things. It chills speech and infringes free speech rights. It attacks Canada's history and undermines its identity. That's my greatest concern, is that this entrenches, and with especially Trump going off the rails in many ways in the U.S., this is an opportunity for that DEI, gender ideology, woke industrial complex to just go on steroids, not on steroids, but essentially to maintain the position that it's had over the past few years without criticism. And I think that's a very bad place for the country to go.
Okay. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate your time and your thoughts. We'll be back right after this break. Welcome back to Merit TV Canada's Election Watch. Hope you got a chance to enjoy and take in some of the thoughts that Eric Kaufmann had, especially when it comes to immigration. It's an interesting fact that it has been a taboo subject to chat about when you have it as being such a serious issue that affects everyday Canadians. Immigration, it should be part of every healthy country. Immigration, I believe, is a necessary economic tool as well. It can be used as a humanitarian tool, but it has to be kept in check. It has to be kept realistic to what can your country handle. It's the exact same situation if you look at it on a micro scale with your home. If you were to take in people that wanted to come live in your home, your house, think about your house. It might have 3 bedrooms, a couple of floors, and a basement. Your house is going to have limitations to what the facilities can provide, from beds to bathrooms to water consumption. These are all on a micro scale, but you will have a limit to what you can actually handle in your home. At some point, you are going to have a place where your home can no longer handle the demand of people that are coming into it. It makes sense. It is common sense and it is logic to have a policy for your house to be, if you want to truly help people and also attract people to be able to come, you will need to have a place where people can thrive. And there is a balance to that. The same thing is for every country. Immigration is a tool. Immigration is something that can also attract and bring great people into our country. But there does become a breaking point within every country to what infrastructure is needed to handle the influx of people. That has to be taken into account. And the fact that this is a taboo subject, that we cannot talk about this openly, and to have it across as discussed in our liberal in our debates for the leadership of our country, that's something that is a missed point and actually should be criticized, because this is something that has changed the economics in our country drastically. It's changed our population. It's changed demand on housing. It's changed demand on our taxes, which is also providing for people who come here. This is a massive issue. So I'm going to bring up, and I'm going to ask all of us, that we can be more open to talking about what is healthy immigration. What does it look like? What is good for the country? What can we do to actually help other people and our country? I think we have to make our country strong. We have to look and make sure our country can thrive in order to help others and to look abroad. But part of that is having a healthy immigration policy. And I hope that we can find that out from our parties. We're going to continue bringing everything you need to know regarding the elections as we move towards April 28th. My name's David Craig, and this is Merit TV's Election Watch.